My name is Constança Santos Silva. I am the founder of Thirst Project Portugal. I trained Taekwondo for 13 years, ended up being a stunt double, and I'm the latest guest on Portugal, the Simple Life podcast, where I talk to Dylan about how I ended up being a stunt double, what it's like to be on Forbes 30 under 30, why I absolutely love Portugal, and, about everything related to Portugal.
Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of Portugal, the Simple Life, and I'm really excited to be joined here by Constança Santos Silva. Constança, bom dia.
Bom dia. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. The sun is finally shining after these last few days of rain, which
we've had a couple of rough days. Yes, it hasn't been easy.
Exactly.
We Portuguese don't handle the rain. It makes everybody depressed.
Most definitely not. We do not. Cancel the rain, please.
Yeah, cancel culture, but only for the rain. Yeah,
exactly.
So we're not going to disclose exactly where you are right now, but you are next to a prison. And as we said before recording, thank goodness you're not in a prison right now. So that's good. You could have been with some of the work that you've been doing. You could have maybe ended up there somehow. But it's good that you're not there.
I mean, hopefully it will stay this way, and I will stay on the outside and not go to the inside. I mean, so far so good. Let's see how the next few years go. You know.
If anybody important is watching, let's just keep it that way. Let's just keep Constança on the outside of those walls. Okay, but Constança, maybe you can start off telling us a little bit about you.
Yeah, of course. So like you said, my name is Constança. I'm 23. I'm Portuguese, obviously. Wouldn't make sense to be in this podcast any other way. And well, the first thing about me that people always ask is the fact that I've trained martial arts for 13 years. So I grew up practicing Taekwondo, which ended up taking me to what I think, obviously bias aside, was the coolest job out of all my friends when we were teenagers, which was to be a stunt double, which was
amazing,
a really fun part of my life. And then one of my proudest achievements is as founder and president of Thirst Project Portugal, a nonprofit organization that aims to end the global water crisis through the efforts of young people. And from Thirst Project Portugal, that led me to be on the Forbes 30 under 30 list. So, there's a correlation with being on that list and ending up in jail, as we can see sometimes. So hopefully I will not be one of those numbers and I will stay on the outside.
We'll keep the statistics down. And if something happens, this conversation never happened. It's good. Well, that's super interesting. Maybe you can just start off, for our listeners. We have listeners from all over the world that are super interested in Portugal and what the country's about. And I always love to hear from people that have grown up in this wonderful place. Just tell us about your memories of growing up in Portugal and what it was like, what do you think was special about growing up here?
Yeah, so I grew up in Lisbon. My school, everything was in Lisbon, but I also spent most of my weekends and every vacation that I had in a place called Vila Nova de Mil Fontes, so in the southwest coast of Portugal. And I always feel like the southwest is the best part of Portugal. And growing up in Lisbon was amazing for me. The one memory always from my childhood was on Sundays when we didn't go down to the southwest coast and we were in Lisbon, just go next to the river, my dad, my mom, me and my brother, and just bike next to the river. And then we would stop next to Padrão dos Descobrimentos, which is, I think, my favorite monument because I am a nerd and I have a favorite monument, and it's that one.
You should have a favorite monument. It's good. It's good.
I used to know every single figure on Padrão dos Descobrimentos when I was younger.
Do you still know?
Not all of them. Not all of them.
So tell us the ones that you do know.
Oh, well, obviously in the front you have Infante Henrique, so the person that was most responsible, as per se, for the discovery period in Portugal and for the navigations. Next to him, you have one of his brothers. At the end, you also have another one of his brothers next to his mom, Dona Filipa, which is actually the only woman that is depicted in Padrão dos Descobrimentos. And then you also have a lot of figures like...
There should be more.
there should be more. She's the only one. But you have Vasco da Gama, obviously. You have Diogo Cão and Bartolomeu Dias. You have São Francisco de Assis. You have Luís de Camões and Pedro Nunes. So you have a bunch of different figures. And we would go there when we were younger and learn their stories. And then in front of Padrão dos Descobrimentos, there's a map on the floor,
That's
which has
right.
every
Yeah.
single place that Portugal was the first big nation to arrive there, let's say it this way. And we used to always be on that map, and my dad would tell me, okay, who got to Brazil in which year? You'd have to go and run, find Brazil. Okay, and now
Amazing.
where is Argentina? Obviously, Portugal didn't go to Argentina, but just for us to know all the countries, and we would run and try to find the countries. And so I feel like growing up in Lisbon is growing up surrounded by history.
Mm.
And my dad loves history. So me and my brother also rubbed off on that a little bit. And we are very interested people. And so it's growing up in the streets and just trying to see what's around us, trying to hear and learn about Fado and about everything in the Portuguese culture. And then when I spent my time in the southwest coast, it was more of the countryside and it was more of the simple life in a way, which we also find in Lisbon, but it was also more of the slow life, right? Because we
Mm.
know Portuguese Alentejo moves
Alentejo.
in
Yeah.
slow motion,
Lento, lento.
and Alentejo because it's lento, exactly. And so growing up in Alentejo was going to the countryside, going to the beach or trying to discover a new hill that you haven't been to, or knowing everyone in the small village that you are and going to pick up the bread in the morning and then listening to the rumors that are spreading around town. And it's just beautiful because it's those meaningful connections that every time you go there, they celebrate you as if you've lived there your entire life, even if you haven't been there for the last 3 months, but they'll ask everything about you and they will talk to you like they've known you for ever, like they are your best friends. And we love nature, my family. And so it was a lot of my brother and I, we were obsessed with Bear Grylls and all of his survival shows. So we were always trying to get my dad to give us things to, our birthday presents. All my friends were maybe getting clothes. I was getting a Swiss knife and being super excited because I was going to be able to help my brother build a new cabin in the woods and then go with a compass and discover where the ocean is and where, etc. So I
Amazing.
think that part was also a nice contrast to the life in the city.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is we were just talking about off camera about my daughter who's just turned 14, and she's now starting to do a lot of geography at school, and they're starting to talk about countries that are developed and countries that are underdeveloped, and it's a really interesting conversation because the last time I spoke to her, we were saying about it. We were saying, well, it's not such a black and white answer, because you could say, okay, America's a developed country, but if you speak to a lot of Americans, they would say, well, actually things aren't working the way they should, and we don't have water in certain parts of the country, and these kind of things. And then what makes a rich country and what makes a poor country? And Portugal traditionally, okay, going back with when you talk about the discoveries, was a very rich country, but the people weren't. And traditionally, it's would be considered a poor country, but when you talk about these things that we have access to freely as Portuguese, and then we're rich, it's there's a richness to that, and how you grew up that a lot of people don't have in today's world, which is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing very captivating and amazing about Portugal is that obviously there are people who haven't been as lucky as me or and sometimes didn't have such a good family or didn't have everything that they needed. Like I was always lucky to always have food on the table, obviously, and more. And but I think that one thing that's amazing in Portugal is that the richness in Portugal is in the streets and it's in the people. It's not in the expensive things that you do in this country. And obviously, it's easy to say when you have the bases and everyone needs, obviously, the base and security, safety. But just you can have an amazing day in Portugal just for going out on the street. If you're in Lisbon, for example, which is the most expensive place in Portugal, you go to Chiado and you spend your entire day just walking up to the castle, stopping in the viewpoints, and that costs absolutely nothing. And so that's one thing that's amazing about Portugal is that the richness is in the street and it's the people that you meet. They're always going to lend you a hand and they're always want to be your friends. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, amazing. Um, I mean, you've also traveled a lot, Constanza, and I mean, what do you sound like you're kind of very connected to your life here and aware of how privileged you've been in terms of the childhood that you had. But often when we travel, when we go to other parts of the world, we see where we're from in another perspective. I mean, how is what have you learned to appreciate even more about your country from traveling so much?
I think the more I travel, the more I love Portugal and the more I realize how amazing Portugal is. And that's not because I'm not enjoying my travels. I love meeting new countries, new cultures. I will probably start working outside of Portugal in the first few years for, because conditions in Portugal. Portugal is a beautiful country, but not everything is perfect, obviously. But Portugal is that country that the more I travel, the more I realize I always want to return. This will always be home. It's not a place where I want to live now and then, okay, I'm going to leave Portugal, go to a different country to work, and then I'll just stay outside of Portugal. No, it's one country where you realize that sometimes you need to be a little bit far from home, but it doesn't mean that it's not always going to be your home and it's not the place where you want to come back to and raise your kids and retire here because of everything that we're talking about, right? And that it's this special magic that you don't find in other places. Obviously, when you're as connected to a place
Yeah.
and you're just meeting the people, you're walking on the street, and every single place in Portugal feels magic because obviously in the beginning I talked about Lisbon and I talked about the southwest coast, but it's not just that, it's any place that you go in the middle of Portugal, there's going to be something super special about that place. And this magic, there's only been, I think, one country in the world where I felt a similar sort of energy.
Okay.
And it was in a completely different country that has nothing to do with Portugal, but it was in Vietnam, where I
Okay.
felt like the people had a similar energy and just every single place was so different from the other, but also so connected in its roots. And I
Yeah.
think that makes Portugal so special.
I've heard that before actually about Vietnam and it was a previous guest and also what the similarities that they found between the two countries. One was the culture of food and everybody being together and spending time, the culture of doing a lot with little, and then also community, like real community, where people have time for each other, people have time for conversations to help. And I must say, having traveled around Europe, it is one of Portugal. I'm originally from South Africa, and there also you have that similar culture of community and Ubuntu and these things. And I must say, Portugal as a European country has that spirit of community that you see in some of those, those cultures in Asia and Africa, which is beautiful.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I've
Yeah.
only spent about 48 hours in South Africa.
Okay.
Maybe if I had spent more, it would also be another country that I would compare.
It depends where you are in South Africa, because we have obviously South Africa. Unfortunately, we have quite segregated communities still, and so it's quite different. But yes, how and also funny you were talking about going and but always coming back. You sounded like one of those discoverers, that you used to study on the statue in Blame. But tell us how the stunt double thing happened.
Well, that was a funny story because it's something, I have a lot of friends who are like, okay, how do you become a stunt double? I'm not that 100% sure. It's
Yeah,
like when you see one of those movies that are super secretive and it's like, how do you get in this place? You don't, they
yeah,
call you.
yeah,
And stunt doubling in Portugal, obviously in other countries, there's a bunch of courses and everything that you can do to better prepare. But in Portugal, it's a bit of an opportunity that comes to you. And I was super fortunate that that opportunity came to me. And in my case, it was because of Taekwondo, obviously. So I had been training Taekwondo already for around 10 years when this opportunity came around. And I was at the time sponsored by a place called Bounce, which now they changed their name. I'm not 100% sure of their name, but it was like a
that's the
trampoline.
trampoline park, yeah.
Exactly. It
My
was
my son keeps asking me if he can go there. I've not taken him yet.
yeah, you should. It's very, very fun, you know. And I was sponsored by that trampoline park. They now have a different name, but at the time it was Bounce. And I recorded a couple of videos and cool things with them about my journey to the World Championship. And we did like a short film for Halloween where I was like fighting a clown and something. So it gave that sense a little bit. It put me out there for those who were watching. And my stunt double boss at the time from the company saw that video, and so I was like, oh, this girl, she's here doing some stunting with this clown. This is fun. I've been looking for another girl to not obviously join the team full time. He has a girl full time who's epic. She does the most insane stunts ever, but he wanted someone that he could also call for a few gigs. And he saw me, but then he saw, well, she's 15. This is clearly too young. And then a year after, he met my Taekwondo instructor, and they got along real well. They had really interesting conversations about the teaching methods that my instructor was using at the time and still is using, because STAT, which is the place where I grew up training, used a lot of American teaching models, and they were very innovative here in Portugal. And so then he found that really interesting. He got to know my instructor, and he talked to him. He's like, okay, I would love to go and watch a practice of some of your kids, maybe see some people that would be able to do some gigs with me and everything. And he remembered me, and my coach said, oh, I have someone that could be interesting for you. And then they were both talking about me. And so he went to see one of my practices. And in the end, he talked to me. He invited me to do a couple practices with him and his team. Those were super fun, it was learning how to get shot. It was learning how to fake those like knife scenes, how to fall off high places. It was just a completely new world to which it was easy for me to fit in because of my martial arts background, because of everything that I had been learning so far. And so from that on, I just joined him, and every time he needed, he would call me, and I ended up doing some super, super cool things like stunt fighting or jumping off cliffs, being hit by cars. And those were some fun years, compared to my friends who were babysitting at the time.
Incredible. Yeah. So when I was a teenager, probably around the age of 15, that was my job that I wanted to do, was to be a stuntsman.
Really?
And I remember once, to my mother's horror, put like I set the table at home, the tablecloth, knives, forks, dishes, glasses, and I threw myself across the table and slid across the table, and she was like, "What the hell are you doing?" And it never materialized for various reasons. But yeah, I always want to know also, where do you go to do that? So it's interesting. But what's the craziest stunt that you've done that you can remember?
Oh yeah, I was saying I think, but I don't need to think. The craziest was when I was hit by a car.
Okay, so you actually got hit by a car.
I actually got hit by a car.
But
It was a Pacific
you're trained
Yeah.
on how to get hit.
Yeah. We train. It's always very safe. Stunt doubling is, well, obviously it's risky situations, but they're done in a safe manner. As a stunt double, you're meant to go in, do your stunt, go out, kind of invisible. Obviously, we're not treated as invisible people, but we try to be invisible in the sense that we want everything to go impeccable. We just get in, but it's always very, very safe. And especially with Mad Stunts, which is the company I worked with, they would never put a stunt double doing something that they weren't prepared to do. And so if something went wrong and someone got injured, it's because we had done a mistake. It's not because they had asked us to do something outside of our comfort zone, because they would never ask that. And to be hit by cars, you would train with a car that has the hood of the car. is more soft, and it has
Okay.
like something like foam inside the hood of the car, so that you kind of learn the
To
movement
roll.
of also jumping a bit to the car, knowing exactly which leg the car has to hit you on, where in your step you'll be. And so you train with that, you train with gear. When you're training, you're wearing a helmet, you're wearing full gear. And then obviously when you have to record the scene, gear all gone, and you record the scene. But hopefully, if you're well prepared, you don't have to shoot 10 takes. You'll get it in one or two if they want cameras in different places. And so that part was super fun. Obviously, we trained for that part, and then you just do it. You have a precision driver. Also, obviously, it's not some random person driving a car against you. It's a precision driver that knows exactly how to speed up the last 2 meters just to give you that push for so you fly further, but then immediately stop the car so you don't get injured. So you learn all of those techniques, and I think that was a very obviously nerve-wracking in a way, but very
Yeah.
fun day. And I obviously felt super secure because my stunt manager, he had prepared everything perfectly. And on the day, you're the stunt performer, but you always have a stunt coordinator that's making
Yeah.
sure everything is going well. And even, for example, when we're recording those stunt scenes, he's the one, I don't know if it's in every production, obviously, but with me, he's the one who's calling action and cuts and making sure that everything's being done in the right timings to make it the safest thing possible.
Okay. I've got to check this out. Are you allowed to say who you were doubling for and what it was for?
Yeah, this one was for, well, it couldn't be more Portuguese. It was for a soap opera. This one
Okay.
couldn't
I
be
was
more
gonna,
Portuguese.
I didn't want to presume, but
Of
I was
course, it
wondering.
was for, I think the name of the soap opera, it was Alma e Coração. I'm almost
Okay.
almost 100% sure.
Okay.
And it was for a girl named Nina, but I don't remember her last name.
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't remember the actress's last
Okay.
name.
So Alma Curaçao.
Alma e Coração. Yeah,
Okay. Need to
Soul and
check
Heart.
Soul and Heart. Yo, I need to see if I can find it. That'll be cool.
I'll send you
Uh,
the video after.
okay, cool. And then yeah, we've had a previous guest a few years ago on the podcast. I think it might have been season 1 or 2. I can't remember. And he was also on Forbes 30 under 30. He did these electric skateboards.
Ooh, I know.
Pedro, I think he's from
Yeah, yeah.
Madeira.
Pedro Andrade.
Exact.
Yeah,
There we go.
yeah, I know he is.
Yeah, I don't think he's in prison, so that's cool as well. Thank
Not in
goodness.
prison. No,
I
he's
don't.
actually launching a new startup related to health. So,
Oh wow, there you go.
on the good side,
Yeah, on the good side. I mean,
good
I must
precedent.
say, I think I don't think I've had any of the people on the podcast that were or have been in prison. So that's good. I'm happy with that statistic as well. Let's keep it that way, people. Um, but yeah, tell us about how that happens. The process of being on Forbes 30 under 30.
Yeah, I think it's something very cool. It's something that when you're growing up and you're interested in business or science, but more on this, like, I'd say not academic roles because business is not necessarily academic, but more of these roles where you study and you do a lot. You have that small interest in business, even if you're doing arts or sports, you see that connection to business, then this list is something that you're aware of. And it's something that you think, okay, this is going to be fun. And I remember the day that the list was public, one of my best friends, she's like my oldest friend that I grew up from school from the age of 3. She obviously knew the list was going out that day. I'd already told her, but that wasn't supposed to. There's 2 or 3 people that you have to tell. And she called me and she's like, Constança, you know what? My mom just reminded me one day where you were having dinner at our house when we were like 13. And we talked about that list for some reason. And you said, oh, yeah, I'm going to be on that list one day. I still don't know how, but I'm going to be on that list. And she called me with that memory. That was something super fun for me. It was like a full circle
Yeah.
moment. But to tell you how I got on the list, and Forbes had done an article on me and on Thirst Project Portugal already. And so that's how I came more in contact with Forbes Portugal. And then the list came naturally. I think I was going to say they have applications open for if someone wants to apply to be on this year's list, but I think applications have closed actually already. But I remember I had applied to be on the list. Someone had
Hmm.
sent me and say, "Hey, I think you should apply to this. I think it would make perfect fit with Forbes, also considering the article that you've already done. So I think you should fill this out and apply." And I was like, "Okay, sure, I'll do it." Obviously, completely forgot about that. And then I'm in class and I receive an email, and I'm like, "Oof." And the email says, "Dear Constança, we're excited to announce that we have nominated you to be on the Forbes 30 under 30 list." And I saw that email, like, immediate screenshot, send it to my best friend who was having classes on the class next to me, scroll down and see in huge, "Confidential, do not tell anyone." And I'm like, well, then I open WhatsApp again and I'm like, "Don't send this to anyone. We are not allowed to send this to anyone." Um,
That's
but
funny.
it was, that was a really cool moment figuring out that I'm on this list, and the letter that said we're on the list said, "Okay, now you're part of the Forbes family and you have a responsibility because we are with you for the good and for the bad. We will always help you launch next projects that we have and we'll always be part of your team." And
Nice.
that could not be more real.
Yeah.
Ever since I was selected to be, not even public yet, but ever since I got that email, I was selected to be on the list. It has been a small family in the way that they have treated me and helped me. And every time that we have something cool that's happening with Thirst Project Portugal, they are the first to reach out and want to help and do articles. I've had multiple speaking opportunities and cool conferences that I got to be a part of and speak in nice panels and do nice speeches because Forbes has called me to be a part of it.
Mm.
And when they get you on this list, it's not just a one-time thing when they're like, "Okay, you got this stamp." It's really, you are now one of the under 30s, and that means that Forbes is going to celebrate every single one of your victories, and they have most definitely done that so far.
Amazing.
And then it's been just cool, because you're on the list and you're not alone. You're with other 29, or in our case, since there was a duo, other 30 epic people that you get to know
Mm.
because of the list. And so the first day, I went to take the pictures for the list alone, and then they called me that they wanted me to be one of the people in the cover. So I came back to shoot the cover with other 4 people that are really cool, and I got to talk with them. Then obviously we had the event where the list was launched, and that was fun because it was a pitch competition between the 30 of us. And I love pitches. I love public speaking, so I prepared my speech. I ended up being one of the winners, so that was also very cool. But it was just a fun day and a full day meeting people who are inspiring, and the kind of, in one way, in the best way possible, kind of give you that imposter syndrome of how do I belong
Yeah. Yeah.
amongst
I can
these
imagine.
so many amazing people that are doing incredible things, whether it's launching health startups that are helping with breast cancer, or whether it's someone that's launched 5 businesses already, or artists, or completely different things, and you think, "Wow, what am I doing here?" And that's the best place to be, is the places where you feel not in a place where you feel like people don't want you, but where you feel like you don't belong in a certain way, that you have to step up, because those are the places that will then motivate you and be a lever for you to actually step up and go on to do
Yeah.
cool things.
Amazing. Between my job as a realtor at Portugal Realty and hosting this podcast, life is pretty busy. But lately I've been receiving so many messages from people that want to know more about buying property here on Portugal's Silver Coast that I've got to do something about it. So starting now, for subscribers only, I'm offering up a 30-minute session per day. That's 5 30-minute sessions for a one-on-one meeting to talk about buying property here on Portugal's beautiful Silver Coast. This is for subscribers only. So please subscribe to book your session and get in touch with us through the links below via WhatsApp or email to book your session today. I'll be happy to speak to you. It's for subscribers only and it's completely free. Well, I mean, that brings us on to the to Thirst Project. It sounds amazing. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Thirst Project Portugal is, like I said in the beginning, an organization that aims to end the global water crisis through the efforts of young people. But it started in the most honest and genuine way that it could for a 16-year-old girl, which is old I was when we started Thirst Project Portugal. And I got to
you were
know
16?
I was 16
Wow.
and I was on social media and I saw a picture of a woman dressed in black, well, in black and purple. And I went to see the caption for this woman, and the caption said, "This is Juliet. Juliet lost her husband and her children to AIDS. She also suffers from this disease, and she is taking care of 8 children who are orphaned from these diseases as well.
Wow.
Juliet used to walk long hours every day to fetch water from contaminated sources shared with animals. Thankfully, nowadays, Juliet and her community were some of the first beneficiaries of Thirst Project, and they now have access to safe, clean drinking water with a safe well." And I remember thinking about it and being like, okay, who's Juliet? What's how big is the global water crisis, and what's Thirst Project, this organization that's helping? And so I spent the next week just investigating about the global water crisis and learning about Juliet, but also learning about Damon and Unjalu and all of these different people and different stories of people that did not have access to safe, clean drinking water. And at the time, well, I got to learn really facts like the fact that there are over 785 million people that lack access to any sort of water and have to walk 6 to 8 hours to fetch contaminated water, sometimes from shared sources with animals, sometimes from puddles, sometimes from dry riverbanks where they have to dig for 4 hours until that hole fills with a little bit of water, and then they scramble to get that water and take it back. And this means that women don't get to go to work, that children don't get to go to school because every day they're walking 6 to 8 hours to fetch this contaminated water filled with diseases, which obviously then has diseases in these
Effect, yeah.
communities, rural places be absolutely through the roof. And so I understood exactly the global water crisis problem and how bad it is. And it got me to send them a message to this page that had posted this picture of Juliet dressed in purple. And they said, "Oh, we work with students too. Which state do you live in?" And I was like, "States? No, no, no. I'm on the other side of the world. I'm in Portugal, but I still want to help." And we decided that I was going to create a team in my school at the time just to do a couple fundraisers, with friends at my school.
Yeah.
And it was the first ever volunteering thing I've done. I mean, I had gone to Banco Alimentar once because my entire class went and I didn't want to have FOMO. So I also went to help sort out the food, but I'd never done something big like this. And it started going super well before I even noticed it was a huge movement. And then came the challenge to officially bring Thirst Project to Portugal as the first official branch of the organization. And at the time, obviously I was like, I'm 16, can I do this? Like, how can a 16-year-old girl do this? But with Taekwondo, I had been the youngest person, the first person to do a lot of things, and a lot of things in competition level, a lot of things in teaching and discovering new styles within Taekwondo. And my instructor, who I'd say is probably my biggest mentor up to today, even though I stopped training 5 years ago, always used to say when I didn't know how to do something, he always said, "Okay, but you really want to do this, right?" And I said, "Obviously." Then he was, "Okay, then you say yes to this challenge and I'll help you learn how to do it. And you'll see. Say yes if you really want to, the rest comes after." And so that's what I thought. I really want to do this. So why not? Let's go forward with this challenge and let's turn this into something big. And then that week, I saw a quote from Mother Teresa that says, "Sometimes we feel like what we do is nothing but a drop in the ocean, but the ocean would be smaller without that drop." And that got me thinking,
Wow.
okay, even if I don't raise that much money, 25 euros is roughly enough to give water to one person for their entire life. And I know I'm good enough to raise 25 euros. And if I'm not, I'm such a proud person that I will put 25 euros myself. And so at least one person I'm going to give water to. So there's literally no negative points that can come from this new challenge. And so I said yes. And I feel like the fact that I was 16 is the reason why this ended up growing so much, because when people ask, "Oh, did you think it was going to be as big?" And they're expecting me to say, "Oh, no, I never thought this would." Obviously, I was 100% sure that this was going to be as big as it is now because I was 16 and we're naive and we're genuine and we're still kids. And
Brave.
that braveness, exactly, that characterizes younger people is the reason why Thirst Project Portugal then actually became something so big. And it's the reason why now
Mhm.
we've given water to over 4,000, 5,000 people by actually 5,000 people by now. And it's the reason why thousands of children and women can go to work or can go to school because they no longer have to fetch contaminated water. And we've done this in the Kingdom of Eswatini, but we've also transformed a little bit of the Portuguese youth in a way because we have over 1,000 people that are working currently and in the past a lot more that have been involved with us that are working in their guiding chapters in their schools and universities in over 50 schools and universities where they're learning new skills and they're getting our community together to raise funds for something amazing.
It is amazing. I remember when I was a student going to Malawi, and yeah, it was kind of the same thing. You were just like, man, it's just a different world, when you grow up the way we've grown up, and then you go to these places, and people have to walk for hours just to get water, and even that water is not good.
Safe.
Um, and yeah, it's incredible. But I mean, you're 16 years old. You've got the whole world. You've got your whole world ahead of you. I mean, why did you want to do this? Like, what was it that
I think
pushed you?
it was a combination of quickly clicking immediately with this organization and with the way that they were operating and the people that were behind that organization. And I think that there's this guy named Evan who was my point of contact in the beginning and still is also a little bit of a mentor for me. And I think if it wasn't for him and the way that I immediately clicked with him in a very genuine and helpful way, that he saw something in me because obviously when I think about it, this is crazy. How did a bunch of people from the United States decided, oh yes, amazing idea, a 16-year-old child who can't even vote or drive or drink or anything is gonna be the legal founder of our organization on the other side of the world in Portugal. Marvelous idea. I don't know
Hmm.
who thought this was going to be a great idea at the time. And actually, when I won a Power of Youth award that I went to LA to receive, and I said this on my speech, like I don't know how. And Evan was there. He was in the beginning when I got off stage. He was like, "Did it work out or not?" And I was like, "Yeah, but how did you know?" He was like, "That doesn't matter. Details could have went the wrong way, but if it did, I mean, consequences would have been that bad." So you have to thank me because I was right. This was amazing. And it really is true when I think about it. I don't know how they said yes, but it was just that click and that push also from their side, that
Yeah,
at 16, you're not used to feeling there's not a lot of opportunities like this for you to have that much responsibility. And I've had that before with taekwondo, and it was something that I loved. And so when I felt that from a different place, it was a exhilarating kind of feeling that I wanted to keep having. And so when they gave me
yeah,
this amount of trust that Taekwondo had given me too, and that my instructor specifically had given me too, it was an immediate yes, and it was a comfortable feeling in novelty. And I realized that novelty can be comforting. It doesn't need to be discomfort or doesn't need to be unknown. The unknown sometimes can bring you that warmth if it's giving you feelings that you are familiar with.
yeah,
And I feel like that's what happened with Thirst Project Portugal mostly. And then I think it's the fact that I was 16 and obviously I was aware that from the moment that we signed the papers and we created a legal organization that it was going to be big and it was going to be something that we needed to be extremely careful with. But at the same time, I was 16, so how aware can you actually be of this? You don't, you kind of know, your parents tell you, but it
yeah,
still leaves some for our interpretation.
yeah. I guess it's you spoke about that naivety when we're that age, and you yeah, there's a part where I suppose it kind of helps because at that age you're not thinking that far ahead, and probably you're just thinking, well, we'll just make it work day by day,
Yeah.
and for good and for bad, it works. So in a
It
good
comes in a
way,
very natural way then.
yeah, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to think about, okay, what if it doesn't work, or what if it does, and uh, almost like the less information I have is better actually, because I'll just make it work. So it's
Yeah.
amazing. But I mean, congratulations! It's an amazing project, and at the end, I would like us to just tell about how people can support the program. Um, but again, coming back to, we spoke about the richness of Portugal. I saw a post the other day where someone published a question on some Facebook group and said, "Is Portugal a rich country?" And when you put these things into perspective, and now we go back and talk about, the childhood that you had, and the things that we have at our disposal here that are for free. I mean, I was walking the other day at Santa Maria Hospital. I was coming back from a consultation, and there's this like water dispenser in the middle of the road, just on the outside, where you can just take your bottle, fill it up. This costs nothing, and then now talking to you, I'm thinking, what would somebody give,
Yeah.
in Africa or in one of these places, to just have that in their town, on their doorstep. And so, yeah, I think when people say, is Portugal a rich country, I'm like, hell yes, it is, for so many reasons. It is a rich country.
I 100% agree. I think and that's also the reason why sometimes people say, okay, but there's dry periods, there's water scarcity in Portugal. Yes, there is. We need to be completely aware of it.
Yeah,
But the truth is still to this day in Portugal, the poorest of the poorest of the poorest, they will not lack access to clean water ever. They
yeah,
will never have to know what it's like to work for now. Obviously, in the future, if we don't take care of our resources, then we
sure.
will probably most likely be in the same situation as these countries. But right now, the poorest of the poorest in Portugal don't know what it's like to walk 6, 8 hours to get to water that will then make you sick, but you also need it. And it's a bit of a gambling game
Hmm.
in a way. And
Amazing.
Portugal, we have that. We have the basic, we have security, we have safety. Of course, we have our issues. I mean, our government fell 2 days ago. So
That's right. Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
not
yeah.
more Portugal than I don't know what it is, right?
Yeah,
Obviously, you're going for the third or fourth election in 5 years.
it's
That's
crazy.
Portugal. But in terms of what makes Portugal Portugal and the people and the place itself, taking what we're doing with it, just the place and the people, it's what richness is like in my eyes, and it's what I see when I say that I want to be rich, is to be able to continue to have this sort of life.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we don't have a government at the moment, but I mean, what? And the funny thing here, though, is when you see it on the news, it's kind of shocking, and then every Portuguese person that I speak to are like, oh, well, this happened just the other day, so we just roll with it and it'll sort itself out. It's quite funny how people react to these things. But I mean, what makes you proud of your country, Constanza?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's that Portuguese people have the ability to keep traditions alive without being stuck in the past. And you see that a lot with father, you see that with history. It's, it's the fact that you can be in Alentejo or be in the West or be in the middle of Portugal, doesn't need to be in the big cities, and you eat better in a random roadside Tasca than in half of Europe's fancy restaurants, and you have an amazing meal for 15 euros wherever you are in the country. It's a country that people visit, and somehow I feel like there's a part of them that never really leaves, because I think once you get it, and
Yeah,
you get this magic, and you don't want this magic to leave.
yeah, or literally like me, they don't actually leave, they just stay. So yes. Constanza, what's one thing that you would like people to remember and to take away from our conversation?
I would tell them to there's that saying in Rome, be Roman, of course. In Portugal, try to be Portuguese and try to see life from our eyes, because with Portugal now becoming such a hot spot for tourists and such a hotspot destination, don't just stay in Porto, Lisbon, and the Algarve. Go visit the other places in Portugal. And even if you do decide to stay in these places, try to see how Portuguese people are living their life. Try to learn about fado. Try to eat in a tasca instead of eating in a very famous Italian. Or try to go into a random place and have an imperial, have a beer, or have a fino if you're in the north. Don't say imperial. That's one advice. Do
Yeah,
not
they
say
get
imperial in the north.
they get angry
They
with you
get very
actually.
angry, but try to have a super bock in the middle of nowhere. Don't go to a fancy cocktail bar that's made for tourists. You will really understand the Portuguese life if you try to live it like a Portuguese person does. So that's what my
Yeah.
advice would be.
I was speaking. I had a guest. I did an interview with a guest yesterday, a guy called Derek Smith, and he's a public speaking consultant. Helps people with public speaking and doing seminars and things like that. And he's in Madeira, and we were actually having this exact conversation of when you come, integration is not the fact that you have a job or that you're working here. It's actually that you're doing the other things. It's pick a foot,
100%.
pick a football team, go to the festas, go to the fadas, go to the local taskas, eat the local food, sit down at the festas where people are sitting and just be and enjoy, because that's what the Portuguese are going to appreciate the most, is that, hey, you don't think that what we're doing is stupid. You don't think that what we're doing is silly. You think what we're doing is wonderful, and be a part of that. It's a good advice.
And that's 100% truth. I mean, Portuguese people, we are very welcoming. We love it. If we
Yeah.
see, at least for me, if I'm eating at a Tashka and I see a foreign person in the table next to me, most likely I will start talking with that person and I will give my advice and I'll tell them a good father place to go or a good restaurant or a
Yeah.
good small city. So just talk to Portuguese people because we love having you here to visit. Tourism is a big part of Portugal.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's then the different situation when you come to live and housing and etc. Obviously, but if you're coming to visit Portugal, if you're coming to be part of, if you really want to be part of the Portuguese culture and be part of our country, we will for sure help you.
Yeah, I mean, we had another guest on the podcast. Her name was Nina. No, it wasn't Nina. I'm trying to. Sorry, there's been a lot of people, but she's working at the Champalimaud Foundation, and she lives in Lisbon, and she was saying that she lived in Germany. She's American, but she lived in Germany a lot of her life, and she never ever spoke to her neighbors. She never knew her neighbors, and within weeks of living in Portugal, she had her neighbors were telling her, oh, you're going to go to the beach, you should really try this beach, and they
Yeah,
would tell her where she should go shop for certain things and which restaurants she should go to. And I just think, yeah, when we start to do those things, like, hey, where's the best place to go get chicken, or where's the best place for bacalhau, or that's where you're really going to be part of something special. So yeah, I like
very
it.
true.
I like it. Constanza, how can people follow you online, see what you're doing, and more importantly, support Thirst Project?
Yeah, so they can follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Just in both, my ad is just my name, Constança Santos Silva. But most importantly, what they should follow is not me, is organization. It's Thirst Project underscore PT on Instagram, on LinkedIn, everything. Our website, thirstproject.pt. And then on our Instagram, they will get every information that they need to either make a donation, create a team in their schools, university, visit young person in Portugal, any way that they can help. And if there's one way that they don't find, they can just DM us and we'll have a full team ready to, the current team will help with everything.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm going to put links in the show notes that people can get in touch and support, because it's an amazing initiative. Constanza, a question that we ask all of our guests: Portugal, the simple life, Why?
I think Portugal, the simple life, because it's what we talked about. Portugal is sitting at the table for hours after a meal because no one's really in a hurry to leave. It's those old ladies that are leaning out their windows or sitting outside of their doorsteps, giving you unsolicited, definitely unsolicited life advice like they've known you forever. It's those broken tiles that you see on the walls in a random street that have seen more history than most museums have. It's Fado. It's Fado playing somewhere in the background. It's knowing that in a matter of a few hours, you can always get to the ocean or the river, the sea. It's football, like you just said, taking over entire streets, going to the food trucks before the game and hoping that Sporting wins in the end. And you're living football like
you're Sporting.
Everyone. I'm Sporting, of course.
I knew you. I had you on the podcast for a reason. I knew.
Of course. And it's football taking over the entire streets on game day, where suddenly everyone turns into a coach. It's the chaos of being. I get super excited to talk about Portugal, sorry, but it's the chaos of stunt plots. You're dancing in the middle of the street. You have a sardine in one hand, you have a beer in the other. It's completely chaotic, but somehow it all just makes sense together, and it all turns into something super simple.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to let you call it.
That's a wrap.
So thank you once again to our guest, and thank you to all of you for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, give us a thumbs up, and please leave a comment or a review. We always love to hear from you. Don't forget, Portugal The Simple Life also has a magazine, so download it. It's for free. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode, and as we say in Portugal, sejas bem-vindo. Welcome to The Simple Life.